video so I conserve the bandwidth for my neighbors.
Okay, well, maybe we'll get moving. My name is Lee Blank, and I'm very pleased to welcome you to this webinar that's being hosted by the Academy, the Cowboy Academy out of the Industrial Engineering and Management Department at Oklahoma State University. And my colleagues with me today is Jerry Dechert, who you also see on the screen. And Jerry and I will make some comments. And Valerie Query is with us. You see her also. She is our technical expert and will allow us to share the screen and do the things that are necessary. So let me go to the first slide and then we'll talk about questions and such things as that. So Valerie, if you'd let me chime in.
You should be able to share.
Okay, everybody see that? Are we on?
It's not coming through.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm seeing it on my screen, so I thought maybe.
Have you hit your share screen?
Hang on, let me see if I did share screen. How's that?
There you go.
Coming through. Thank you.
Okay, we'll do slideshow and get it up. Okay. As I mentioned, this comes from the Cowboy Academy. This is a part of the webinar series, and this is on advanced education. And as I mentioned, my name is Lee Blank, and Jerry will be on in a little bit. We're going to kind of introduce ourselves. Jerry is a new member of the Academy, and I've been on a couple of years. Both Jerry and I have degrees from Oklahoma State. I have a master's and doctorate, and Jerry has a all way through bachelor's, master's, and doctorate. So here's the plan that we hope to follow. And we're going to introduce ourselves. I'll do that, and then Jerry will when he gets through. We're going to have, we have about a 10 to most 15 minutes of some comments and personal experiences and facts about what happens in graduate education. And if you have questions, please use the chat function. You can ask while we're in the presentation or afterwards. And if you would like to be sure that there's an anonymity aspect, we would suggest that you, if you want to do it that way, send your question to Jerry Dechert while I'm talking, and then you can send it to me while Jerry is speaking, and that way one of us can either interrupt or kind of manage the questions, but we definitely would like to have any. We'll have an evaluation at the end that will give you a link. We always will appreciate your input so that we can do a better job of these in the future. What I'd like to talk about a little bit is some of the aspects of what happens in an advanced degree. In my experience, first of all, is you should know a little bit about me. I went to a small undergraduate university for an industrial engineering degree in San Antonio, Texas, but then was very pleased to go to Oklahoma State for my master's and PhD. I did an internship with AT&T when I was an undergraduate and worked for a while, about a year before I went to graduate studies at OSU, and then flipped back and forth actually between universities and industry experience while after I had finished all my graduate work. So I also served for many years at Texas A&M University in the Industrial Engineering Department as a faculty member, and I was the dean, the associate dean in the office of the Dean of Engineering in charge of the graduate program. So I got to visit with just hundreds and hundreds of individuals who were in one degree plan or thinking of going to another one, who were serious about graduate studies or really didn't know what they wanted to do. So I thought I'd share a little bit of the aspects of what some of those facts are. And then Jerry's going to talk more about his own personal experiences. And he's in an entrepreneurial area for virtually all of his professional career. So we kind of complement each other. So let me put my timer on so I don't get myself too long here. What happens? Well, in undergraduate, you take a lot of classes, tests, and have some projects. And when you get into graduate studies, you get to choose your courses. Oh, there probably would be a couple of them, especially if you're in another area like moving from ME to industrial and systems engineering. You might have a couple of classes just that you may not have taken as electives when you were in a different kind of either math or stat or a different engineering. A lot of projects that would allow you to work with other people at the graduate level. I think one of the most interesting things out of graduate studies is the interdisciplinary learning. I know at Oklahoma State, the course that I remember most when I was a master's student, there were 3 of us that worked with a professor in IE and a professor in chemical engineering, and there were 4 students, graduate students in chemical engineering. And we used dynamic programming on a real world project. And that course that was done back in about 1968 or 1969. And of all the courses I can remember at OSU, that one was one of the best experiences I ever had because it was so interdisciplinary. And you kind of can expect that at the graduate level. In terms of faculty interfaces, it depends upon what experiences you've had as an undergraduate, but you would have much more interface with individuals who are faculty members and staff members too, and other students. You will make new acquaintances, but the aspect of working on a particular project or so, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, is definitely a part of graduate education. One of the things that I dealt with so many times is what happens when you are looking for the acceptance into graduate studies. Now, some people just basically slide right in, but I think it's important to know what acceptance means. And it's obvious that your undergraduate grades are important, but oftentimes, especially in IE, I found people who were not so good the first 1 or 2 years, didn't take undergraduate studies as seriously as they should have, and then they made much better grades in their junior and senior year. There are a few aspects that may come into play, but the overall is that if you've done quite well, usually a 3.0 at the undergraduate is a kind of a beginning. If you had something like a 3.5 or a 3.8, you're surely going to get a full acceptance. But if you were under a 3.0, you may get a conditional acceptance. It's often called preliminary or provisional, but it's conditional usually is a common term. And if you wanted to go to a particular university and you only got in conditional, I really would encourage you to not be too discouraged, because if you do well, that first semester is usually a 1 semester, sometimes the first year, but usually 1 semester on conditional. If you do well in your graduate courses, or even if you have to have some preliminary courses, if you're moving from one major over to an ISE or an IEM degree, you would find that you will be very successful. And part of that is because when you get into graduate studies, you're kind of asking more of the questions, why is something, not how to do something. You're exploring differently. So there's a broadening and a widening and even an in-depth dimension that is different because you start to emphasize your own areas. So it's a lot more at your own discretion. Master's and graduate programs are not accredited by ABET normally. They can be, but they're normally not. And one of the reasons that most universities and departments choose not to have their graduate programs accredited by ABET is to allow that kind of flexibility for a student coming in from a different major or continuing in the same major. Also, I wanted to mention when it comes to acceptance, any kind of undergraduate experiences that often, I know in the previous job as graduate dean, we called them the other education. Leadership in student professional organizations, leadership in particular projects, if you were like the project manager when you were with the students, if you took an internship, those activities are looked at. And often you will end up having an interview in terms of either virtually now, obviously, but on campus if you're close, and we aren't in the middle of a pandemic. But all of those go into play when the acceptance comes forward to you. Your ability to write may be asked, so that if you had a good undergraduate project experience, the admissions team, which will be made up of faculty members, might ask to see one of those, to see what you did. And so any of these kinds of things that have been there, don't be shy, show them off, because they will show your prospective department and the admissions committee for a master's or PhD, but since you're probably at the undergraduate, those go into play. And I want to say that especially if you're moving from one degree, like a mechanical engineering or something in the science area, over to engineering, and maybe you had ME or IE as a minor, those leadership dimensions and projects are really important. Now, funding, that's always an important aspect. Well, there are several kinds of funding. The TA as a teaching assistant, RA as a research assistant or research associate. You may have a fellowship. For example, when I went to OSU after the first year in my master's, I got a NASA fellowship. And I had responsibilities somewhat like a TA, but I wasn't on money that was coming directly from the university. It was on a NASA fellowship. You might be called an RA, but onto a particular research project with a faculty member. And so it's very often that projects are available to get into an RA. You probably would not get an RA the very first semester that you went into graduate school. But again, I'd say don't be discouraged, because there is a proving ground dimension. And the teaching assistant studies, one of the best things that can happen is to switch between a TA and an RA sometime or the other, because then you get both experiences. What university life is like, and get to work with faculty members in different areas and students who are at different levels. You may be a master's student working Apple.
Hello, this is Jerry. Have we lost Lee?
It looks like we have. He was worried about his internet connection. So.
Okay. I'm not sure how we contact him if he's not in the meeting. Let's go ahead and give him a second to cut back in here. Are there any questions from anybody? We've got sort of a smaller group, and as we see if Bill or if Lee can get connected back in, we could field any questions that people have developed so far through the discussion that we've had. I haven't received anything on the chat side for questions. All right, so I'm assuming that Sundaresh is trying to contact Lee.
Something that interested me was kind of what was advertised in the email, some of the bullet points about different career opportunities that advanced degrees bring, and the decision to work first or do graduate studies, and things like that. That kind of piqued my interest a little bit.
Sure, and I'm planning to address those things. And if I don't cover them as directly as you'd like, we can certainly at the end come back and address those. But my intent is to touch upon those subjects as I go through my piece here.
Great.
But those are good questions, and that's something we want to deal with this morning or today, since it's not morning in certain parts of the world that we're interacting with. I've had to train myself. I get on the phone calls and it's not always morning where everyone is at. So I try to say hello instead of good morning.
I think Lee is going to, his internet is back on, so he's going to try and join.
Okay.
So Valerie will probably have to let him in, or maybe she's doing that right now. Okay.
Okay, I guess I'm back up. Sorry, we've had some real troubles with AT&T, and it just kind of cuts off. And so then we have to reconnect through the, to get the wireless back on. And we've even had AT&T out. So if any of you are on AT&T, we're switching. I suggest you switch. Let's see. I don't remember. Well, I couldn't tell where I went off, so I have to rely upon Valerie to allow. Can I go ahead and go back to share?
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay, we're going to try. All right. Jerry, can you tell me where we quit?
I think you're at the bottom of your first slide.
Okay, so
about doing TA and RA and how both of those together can enrich things.
Okay, well, that was real close to the end. Actually, that's about it. The only thing I believe I didn't mention was that I wanted to be sure that that you knew that you would not get probably an RA the very first semester unless you had had some really good internship experiences. Well, let me move along and finish up. Jerry's going to talk a lot about opportunities over time, but one thing that graduate degrees definitely offer is industry and business, not-for-profit, a lot of IEs. I was talking with some the other day that have moved into finance, healthcare. The industrial engineering is just such a wide and broad opportunity to go into government, opening your own business for entrepreneurship. You can surely expect better salaries and bonuses and travel over time. One thing that industrial engineering did for me, for sure, is that it gave me leadership opportunities for both projects while I was in industry at AT&T and then Verizon. I worked for a utility company as a rate analyst and applied a lot of statistics. I went overseas for about 15 years into the Middle East as a result of being an industrial engineer. And in fact, just moved back to the United States about 3 years ago. But the opportunities with an IE graduate degree to go into international positions is just really excellent. Would be something that I say would keep in mind if that happens to be something you might find of interest for you. The aspect of work first or to go to a degree first, again, Dr. Dechert is going to talk about that. I wanted to mention a very common question that I've always fielded and been asked many times is, should I interview now? And I just wanted to say the answer is yes, absolutely. Because you may find so-called dream of your lifetime. In fact, I'm a mentor with one of the students in the IE department at OSU, and she's just finishing her undergraduate. And she's had a particular job in mind, and she just got an interview for this week, actually. So she's thinking, graduate school, do I take my job that I really want for a while? So you should interview. It gives you experience at interviewing. It looks at different opportunities, and it's just the right thing to do. I do want to mention the possibility of going on even further. If you get into the master's and you find out that university life is something that you might want to do, the aspect of teaching and research is really important. And by the way, if you stopped at a master's, community colleges and teaching in pre-engineering programs and working with young students who are who have not gone straight into university. I know two people that have done this, actually one with a master's, one with a PhD, one part-time and one full-time. And that aspect is so valuable in mid-career, but if you really like to help other people learn things, it's a wonderful opportunity. So I guess I'll close with saying my personal experience have been mostly in terms of being able to move back and forth between different industries, different universities, international, the aspect of working with people, helping people find compromise and doing team building. IEs are just so good at that. The systems dimension and the management dimension that comes from it at universities like OSU, and there are a lot around the country. Many universities have good programs, but if you like an applied program, universities like OSU are just so excellent. If you are more interested in the theory, then of course you can do it at a university like OSU or a lot of other ones that have become more theoretical. And so with that, for now, I'm going to stop and we'll see if there are any questions, and then we'll move over to Jerry.
So I don't have any chat questions, Lee, but we got a small enough group if people would like to unmute and directly ask Lee a question, or he can field more later on as well. But I would encourage, at this point, if anybody has any questions, please unmute and direct those to Lee.
Yeah, please do. Be glad to try to answer them.
All right, well, let's just go ahead and we'll move on. And as we said, towards the end, we'll have another Q&A session opportunity, and you can direct things to Lee there as well. I'm going to go ahead and try to share my screen. And Zoom 5 is here. So let me see if I can do this. All right, so hopefully at this point you see a slide that says Cowboy Mentoring Academy. If I can get a agreement. Yes.
Definitely.
Super, so let's go ahead and get started on my piece here. Happy to be here today. So just want to point out that this is a result of activities from the Cowboy Academy Mentoring Program. We have a group within the Cowboy Academy, which is a group of alumni that get together to work on things and connect with one another. And one aspect of the Academy is developing mentoring. So everybody that's involved with this subgroup is very interested in connecting with students. We like to try to interact with students to the degree that we can. And we're working on a mentoring program, but this is also a piece of that, is to try to communicate with current students or recent graduates and get into relevant issues for them. And so the topic today is actually graduate studies, because we get a lot of questions. I think Amber had some of those earlier that we're going to talk about. So today's topic is graduate studies, but we're also going to do some other programs where we try to connect students with industry, so you can get a feeling for what different industrial engineering positions like out in the workforce. So we have other webinars that we're trying to put together along this series, and it's all an outgrowth of this mentoring program, where we really want to find ways to connect back with students, both current and recent graduates. It helps keeps us connected with things, and it's something that we enjoy as alumni who've been out of the program for a while, but still take pride in being OSU IEM alumni. So this afternoon, today, I got to get my timing right. So today I'd like to talk about graduate studies, and I'm looking at it as a series of decisions. So I'm an industrial engineer, so I start thinking about things like decision trees and flow charts and process mapping, all that kind of stuff. So I'm looking at this as a series of decision points. And so we're starting with decision point 1, which is, I assume that you're finishing an undergraduate degree. And so the decision is, do I want to continue and do graduate studies, pursue a master's, or do I want to pursue a full-time position? And I kind of was thinking in advance from the IE perspective, because of course IE is the superior degree, but I understand we have some mechanical engineering types and other disciplines represented. So, you know, it's an inclusive world. We'll include those backgrounds as well. In fact, other engineering degrees are great backgrounds to do graduate work in industrial engineering. So first question is, do you want to do a master's degree or not? Why graduate studies? And my personal perspective is my default is that I think graduate studies are great for everybody. I think anybody that's been involved with the engineering curriculum, trying to put together course of studies, understands that 4 years is just really a very difficult time frame to fit in an engineering program. You always feel like you're leaving something out, or you're not covering something as in depth as you'd like. So really, I look at the master's as an opportunity to really gain depth as an engineer, to get more time in specific areas that are of interest to you, and really spend more time on some things that are difficult to do at the undergraduate level. So I'm a big fan of graduate studies and masters. I think it makes you a better engineer when you put in those extra 2 years of learning. However, I understand that it's definitely not for everybody. The 4-year degree, or 4+ years, depending on how your program works out, is very challenging. It's very difficult. At the end of that, there's a strong feeling for a lot of people to get into the workforce and just continue their education, formal education. And that's a great choice. I mean, an undergraduate degree sets you up to do a lot of things. You don't have to have that graduate degree to be successful. But my default is that I would always encourage people to consider graduate school, just because you learn a lot in those 2 years as a master's student that you're not able to do in what I consider to be the rush of a 4-year undergraduate degree. So this decision kind of connects to what I think is one of the keys to graduate studies success. And really the big thing to make things happen to me in a graduate program is commitment. It gets, you know, I think the differentiator between somebody who starts a program and finishes it really isn't necessarily intellectual ability or those types of things. I think a lot of it comes down to commitment, because it's a difficult course of study. The courses are challenging. And so that it can be a difficult thing to pursue, even though it does enhance your skill set. You know, as a graduate student at that point, you have an undergraduate degree, so you do have the option of earning an engineering professional salary. So if you're a full-time student and you're saying no to that, that can be a very difficult decision to make. You know, you're committing to continuing to live on frozen burritos and ramen noodles, when as a full-time working engineer, you can do a little bit better than that for feeding yourself. So, you know, that's where the commitment part of it really, I think, is key. People who start the programs and then don't finish because it is demanding and there are other alternatives. So it makes it a challenge to complete that. So when I say, what do I think is the key to success, is really your commitment level. Do you really want to be there? Is this something you're excited about doing? And that'll really help you succeed. A lot of that goes into the situation you're going into. What school are you selecting? What do you want to study? Do you have an interest in specific areas? Do they align well with that school? All of those things go into making it a successful situation. But again, you know, undergraduate degrees are great. I know we've got a number of people on the call here that have undergraduate degrees and have fabulous careers. And that's a great option for folks to go. But again, I have a sort of a tendency to favor graduate studies because that's the choice I made and it worked out very well for me. So next thought here is timing. So I've kind of looked at it so far as being a full-time student or not. And I've kind of also couched it towards starting your degree right after you finish your undergraduate. And in general, I think you're better off to do the graduate work as quickly as you can, just because formal education, I think, gets more difficult to pursue the further away you are from it. I think things are just kind of aligned that it's easier for you to finish a degree and then go to the master's than it is to work. However, if you aren't really committed to a graduate program, you really have kind of burned out, you're ready to go get some experience and understand what you want to do, then working full-time first makes a lot of sense. So again, this is all very situational specific. It depends on where you're at, you know, what your value system is at that point. But you don't have to do it immediately. I think it's easier to do the work if you do it immediately after you get the degree, but you can take some time, go work, get some experience, and then start a program. And for a lot of people, that's the right decision. After 4 years, they're not ready to continue their education. But that doesn't mean you have to close the door on it either. So that kind of connects to the next part. I'm kind of looking at this as a binary decision, right? Either you're full-time or not. another path is to be a part-time student. So you start a career and then you also start a graduate program as a part-time student. That's one way to pursue this. I think it's a great way, again, situationally, depending on where you are. That would, to me, would be your access to the program. You know, traditionally, this would be, are you in a place where you can go attend classes somewhere at night? Now we have a number of distance learning opportunities. I'm really not very educated in that area, but I know there are a lot of those opportunities out there so that you can have a full-time position and start your graduate studies on a part-time basis. Again, this is another one of those commitment things. You have to be real with yourself and understand that you're not going to finish that degree in 2 years like a full-time student will. It's going to take you something longer than that. And I can't speak to that with a lot of understanding. I haven't done that. I understand, you know, if you take 1 or 2 classes a semester, it's just going to extend the time that you're doing that. But at the same time, you're also bringing in your experience from your full-time position. And it can make it much more meaningful, and it might fit very well with your personality to go that direction. But again, I think you need to have patience. It's going to take you a while. If you're going to, you know, not have it completed in a year or 2 and drop the program, you need to deal with that expectation, because, you know, when you're splitting your time, it's difficult. Also, the time commitment thing seems to me like it would be very challenging. Full-time positions are challenging, and then if you add graduate work on top of that, you'd have to be pretty committed. So, you know, it's just, those are the trade-offs to make in pursuing that. The other avenue that can be very advantageous, though, is if you do find the right company that is very supportive of you pursuing your program, then they can facilitate that for you. They can give you some time as a part of your work day to dedicate to coursework. Some companies will even support you financially. It varies widely by company. But I would encourage you, if you are interested in grad school but want to start a position, as you interview, as you do your research on companies, I would spend time thinking or understanding how they view graduate school. Do they value graduate school? Would they support you through graduate school, or are they not really that excited about it? You know, and that varies. There's so many different companies, so many different perspectives. And if you just look, you can find one, I think, that aligns with your perspective. You know, some companies really, they want undergraduates, they want to get them into their program, they want to teach them their culture and develop them within their own group, and they aren't really very excited about graduate work. Other companies really like to support it. They'll give you time, they'll give you financial support to do these kinds of things. So it's very situational. Again, it's specific to a certain situation. I would encourage you to do your homework and do your research on that as you try to make these decisions and think about those types of things. So the next point here is an MSIE versus an MBA. Should I get an IE master's degree, or should I pursue an MBA? And so this is where I'm kind of going to branch off into my own thought process and how this worked for me. So I was receiving an undergraduate IE degree from Oklahoma State, 1990, you know, just a couple of years ago. And I was in this boat where I really wanted to pursue a graduate program. For me, I enjoyed the environment. I really liked being a student. I was okay with frozen burritos and ramen noodles for a couple more years. I liked the freedom of being a student and enriching my education. So I'd already kind of decided I wanted to do graduate school, but I wasn't really sure where or what I wanted to do. And I had thought about an MBA program. So I had a visit with Professor Joe Mize, who was on faculty at the time. And he's an outstanding individual. He's a brilliant guy, a super guy. And just sat down with him and had a long discussion. And by the way, I would encourage you to do that with faculty or people that you have respect for, connect with, as you make these decisions. You know, book a little time and just say, you know, this is what I'm thinking. Can you help me understand it? And so Professor Mize was great. We talked about different programs, and we talked about other top-rated grad programs. And he said, you know, you'd be fine at either of those places, but you know, OSU is just as good as those places, and I think you'll do very well here. But you know, he gave me some great even-handed advice. And then I mentioned that I thought about an MBA program, and his response was, that's a great thing to consider, but really, when you think about it, you can build the same or a very similar program through a master's in IE. So his point was, at the time, there was one required class to get your master's in IE. You had to take quantitative foundations, which was just not a whole lot of fun. But everybody had to take quant. That was part of the deal. And then you had to have a minimum number of IE courses. Otherwise, you could build your own program, which is the great thing about majority of master's program is you have a lot of flexibility in what you want to take. So he said, all right, if you want an MBA, Jerry, well, go ahead and take some classes over in the business school as a part of your master's program, and you can kind of sprinkle in that flavor as you go. So the other part of MBA is I think most of the top MBA programs really want to see you have some experience before you begin an MBA program. So if I was going to try to get into one of those top programs, I would have needed to go and get some work experience first rather than go directly into that program. So I listened to his advice. It made a lot of sense to me. So I pursued a master's at OSU, and my first semester I took an accounting class. And we don't have any business majors on here, so I can take shots at business majors. But basically, it was fine. I learned some things. It was a good enough class, but I came to the conclusion that I was a lot better off staying as technical as I could in my formal graduate education. I determined there were a lot of things that I could learn outside, through experience, through connections with people as I network. And I really felt that a lot of the business studying topics were really those kinds of things for me, as opposed to like stochastic processes. That's not a class that that's not material that I'm just going to sit down on a Saturday morning and crack open a book and really nail stochastic processes. For me, that's a lot better course for me to take in a formal situation with a faculty member who can help me guide me through that learning process. So after that first semester in my master's program, I really kind of took the direction of I want to take more challenging, more technical classes, things that I probably won't learn on my own, and then things related to my areas of interest, which became statistical process control, quality assurance. So that was really kind of how I made that decision and how that worked for me. So that's really kind of decision point one. I spent a lot of time on that because I think that's where a lot of people are, is at the undergraduate level. Do I want to do a master's or don't I? But it's really not the last decision point in the tree. So you can come to decision point two. In my case, is you've completed your master's program, and now do you want to pursue a PhD or do you want to go to a full-time position? So in my mind, there's sort of a differentiation between degrees. So the undergraduate degree, that's designed to get you to be a practicing, capable, functioning engineer. The master's program for me, really, it adds depth to the engineering experience. It's 2 years for you to gain more technical experience, to go more in detail into the materials that you're going to be working with. But again, it's really sort of to become a practicing engineer. Some aspects of research start to build into the master's program. So you're starting to get an understanding of how research works, what the research world is like. But there'll be some research dimensions depending on the master's program. But really, it's still a lot of coursework and some limited research work that would go towards your master's degree. When you go to the PhD level, then it's really about developing your own research program. It's being able to add to the body of knowledge. It's able to independently handle issues and questions, problems that haven't been adequately solved yet, and develop solutions or approaches or methods to that. So it's really about developing independence of research capability. So when you make that decision at the master's level, when you complete that, it's really, do I want to become a researcher or do I really want to become a practicing engineer? So that's kind of the differentiation for me. Other people may argue. I always win those arguments. That's just the way it goes. But there are different perspectives on all this. But for me, if you want to do the PhD, it's really about becoming a researcher and where that direction would take you. So as part of that PhD studies, you want to become do you have an interest in becoming a researcher? Keys to PhD program success. Here, to me, this is really, again, commitment is big. You'll meet a lot of people who are ABD, all but dissertation. That means they did all the coursework, but in the end, they didn't complete their dissertation to complete the PhD because it's a difficult program. It's a bit of a hazing process. For those of us that have PhDs, we don't want it to, it wasn't easy for us. It's not going to be easy for you to get one. That's just part of it. But at the same time, it's very achievable if you have that commitment level, that interest level. Another part that I think is key to success in a PhD program is connection with your advisor. It seems to me that people that I knew that really struggled didn't really connect well with the advisor, and that caused them problems. It doesn't mean they do all the work. It doesn't mean they hand things to you. It just means that you connect and work well together and can be productive. So, those are really my considerations on whether or not you want to do the PhD. Do you want to be a researcher? Do you want to pursue an academic career? Do you have a course of study that interests you that much that you're going to dedicate that time to it? And then can you find the right fit from a program, a school, an advisor that's really going to work for you? So in my case, I finished my master's, and at that point, I really wanted some experience, and I had an opportunity. So Professor Ken Case was part of the faculty. He worked with me on my master's work. I did research with him. He had a connection to Abbott Labs, which is a medical diagnostics company out of Chicago, and they were interested in finding somebody that could do the kinds of things that I could do. So he helped connect me to that company. I was able to, as a part of the interview process, I made it clear that I was interested in potentially pursuing a PhD. So there were really two options for me to hire into that company. One was sort of a long-term career track path. The other was sort of a interim position where after a year, I was going to look at maybe pursuing PhD work. So I took that job and spent a year working in industry doing SPC design experiments type activity for a medical diagnostics company. So I did that for a year, and then I decided I was able to find a situation where they would support my PhD program with Professor Case as my advisor. And I was still interested in pursuing the PhD. So after a year working, I went back to Oklahoma State and did PhD work with Professor Case as my advisor. I did all three of my degrees at Oklahoma State, which is not generally recommended. I did that because of the situation that I had with Abbott Laboratories and their willingness to fund me for me to be able to do a project, a dissertation that was very interesting to me. They offered me summer activity, summer support to go work in Chicago. So financially, it was a good situation for me. And Professor Case is one of the top folks in his field. So there really was, even though, strictly speaking, all three degrees, the same program, not a great plan, but in me, the trade-off made sense for me to go ahead and do that. Ultimately, I think it probably did limit some of the places that I could have interviewed, but it didn't really, it worked out very well for me. I don't regret making the decision to do all three at the same place one bit. So I completed my PhD at Oklahoma State. I went into academia for 2 years. I was a professor at the University of Oklahoma for 2 years. It was a good time there. I enjoyed it. I liked the work quite a bit, but in the end, I had the opportunity to come back to Wyoming and become part of a family farming operation, be a small business owner as a part of that. And also I had a pretty good path to continue the work that I had done with Abbott Laboratories, which I have been able to do since returning back here and taking on small business ownership of Wyoming hay cubes. So in the end, I was able to be a small business owner, which is a great fit for industrial engineering. I'm not going to really have time to discuss that, but we could talk about how being an industrial engineer is a great background for small business ownership. But that's benefited me greatly. And then the PhD has really allowed me to have a position with a company that values PhDs and continue to do that kind of thing over the years. So really, when you make that decision, if you have a PhD, would you prefer an academic or an industry position? It really depends on what your interests are. Both are very rewarding. Both are very different. A lot of opportunities for PhDs in both private settings and in academic settings. The group I work with at Abbott Labs, there are 8 people in my group. 6 of them are PhDs. They're PhDs from sciences rather than engineering. But I work for a company that values PhDs a great deal. And having a PhD has helped me substantially within the company. I know there are other companies that don't feel that way. So as you find positions, you kind of need to do the research to understand what the best fit for you is and what makes sense for you. another thing to mention here is, if you want to be in consulting, having credentials is very beneficial in consulting, and having the PhD as a credential for consulting is also very helpful. So if you're interested in a long-term consulting career, PhD can be very beneficial for that situation as well. So I've been going on here for probably about 20 minutes. I've kind of talked about my situation, how I made those decisions, where I'm at this point. Are there any questions or any topics I touched on that people would like to develop a little bit further?
While you're thinking about questions, I might mention that one of the things that Jerry mentioned, I wanted to reiterate. I said it earlier about flexibility, and Jerry talked about it for himself. And I was much the same way at OSU. In fact, the reason I went to the Industrial Engineering and Management program at Oklahoma State after being accepted at several others for graduate studies was I was interested in a really broad. I like to work with people. And so even at the master's program, I took a course in industrial psychology. I took a course in business management. As I went through, even at the doctorate level, I took courses in banking and finance. And so those counted. So I didn't just stick with operations research or human factors or whatever. And I, like Jerry, really enjoyed the statistics. I've been a textbook writer now for close to 50 years for McGraw-Hill in the area of engineering economics. And actually, it's because of going to OSU and working in the area with professors as a TA in the area of engineering economics that I found that I really enjoyed the practicality of that for people who are not just in a professional career and trying to make, say, cost estimates, tax analysis, inflation considerations, but in their personal life. And so that's led me to do a lot of writings in that. And it would not have been otherwise if I hadn't gone into a program that was broadly based like the one is at in IEM at Oklahoma State. I've taught at Texas A&M University. I've taught at University of Texas, and I've taught overseas in the Middle East. And I've never found an IE program that was more flexible than that OSU offers. I think that's to their real benefit. As Jerry said, anybody have any questions that we may be able to answer? You can just unmute and ask. We don't need to go through the chat. I know Amy, you and Madison are in other programs. That's one reason it's important to know that the switch to get something out of the area is a little bit different. I was Dean of Engineering for a long number of years overseas in a very international institution called the American University of Sharjah in the United Arab Emirates. And one of the reasons that people moved to the IE department there, our program, is because they had been, especially in mechanical and electrical, it was so deterministic. And IE offers some of the opportunities to put variation, risk, stochastics, call it what you want, but to allow flexibility in terms of dealing more with things that are in the world, as opposed to just being so formulaic in the orientation.
Well, by the way, I'll just add that my own background, I have an undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering and an MBA and a PhD in industrial. And I think it's, I love both my mechanical engineering degree and the MBA, but I really love IE the most of all the three degrees, and that's where I made my career. And we have quite a few alum who gone your path, Amber and Madison, that have done quite well.
Well, just to be sure we're moving along, I just sent a chat to everyone that has the link for an evaluation. We are really very interested in any feedback that any of you may have to try to improve it, because there are a whole series of webinars that are planned that you'll see Stacy Wobble's picture there. Stacy's in charge of working with people in different industries. And so we'll be offering examples of that. Stacy, did you want to say anything? And I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but did you want to make a comment about future possible webinars?
Leland, this is Bill.
Yes.
Could I add something to this webinar?
Sure. And let's be sure we don't have questions from some of the students that
Go
are.
right ahead. I don't want to take out a student.
Okay, Bill, you're on.
Well, what I want to do is emphasize a point that Jerry made in passing, and I want to kind of make it stronger because it's a very valuable point. I have a IE degree, master's degree from OSU. I got my undergraduate from University of Alabama in IE. And the key to it is the IEM part, the M part, management. And I cannot tell you
Right.
how valuable that aspect of the IE degree is here. And I had my choice of a lot of schools. I mean, a lot of schools. And I picked OSU for the right reason. And I look back on it, very grateful that I did. But one of the points that Jerry made is that how flexible, usable an IEM degree from Oklahoma State is. And am I plugging OSU? Yes, I'll tell you that up front. How valuable an IEM degree is from OSU in the world of running your own business. And we're not talking about entrepreneurship. I'm talking about running your own business. I've run 6 businesses. I'm 5 and 1. I made a mistake on one of them, but I didn't make them again. And I will tell you right now, my experience from OSU IEM, all aspects, the whole picture, because the IEM part brought it all together. I came in with very narrow understanding of engineering, how I was able to use it in connection with people, profit and loss, management, accounting, all those parts came together, have basically given me a foundation to start a lot of businesses. I'm very successful at businesses. I can put a business together in a heartbeat. And I will tell you right now, if you're interested in ever working for yourself, the best degree that I would ever tell you to get is the one from this school. And I know Sundridge he may choke at this a little bit, but I tell people, if you want to run a business, don't even go to school, because a lot of it can be learned on the job. But if you want to get the right degree for it, this is it, because it really helped me. And looking back on it, I would say to you, if that is a field that you're thinking about going into, this is a good place to go. So I hope, I wonder, like I said, look at Jerry. He's running his own business in Wyoming. It works for both of us. We both went through it a different way. So I encourage you to think about that. And thank you for the time there, Lee. Appreciate
You are
it.
most welcome, Bill. Bill and I were at OSU together for the same time. I'm not sure we knew each other very much, but I made the comment about making different friends for life, and boy, what a wonderful way to do it in graduate studies. A little bit differently than you do when you're in the undergraduate programs. Jerry, any other comments?
I don't think so. I think, is Stacy still there? Did you have you want to toss it? I mean, we're putting her on the spot, but you started too before, Lee. Are you?
Yeah.
You want to talk about the other webinars, Stacy, or is that?
Sure. Sure, I'm
know-
happy to say a few words. So coming up over the course of, the next years, we're going to cycle through quite a number of the companies that hire industrial engineers from OSU, and you'll get to hear a little more about those companies, but also what our industrial engineering graduates do within those companies. So I think it'll be really interesting to show the breadth of what an IE can do in industry. So stay tuned for some of those coming up.
Okay. Well, I guess the best thing to say at a point like this is, gosh, I'm so glad that you were here. And this is recorded. Let's see, Sundaresh, is it possible to go on the website for the department and see the recordings if you got they have some friends that might be interested in seeing this?
Sure, I'll ask Valerie to share our website. It's actually a newer website, and you may not have seen that yet, Lee. It's still not official, but I think we can share the new website. Valerie, are you able to do it?
I don't know if I can post it to the website at this time, but I could certainly get it up on our YouTube channel
Oh,
Yeah, understood. Yeah.
for hosting the video.
that would be good. Yeah. Well, I think that if especially those of you that maybe have already decided, I hope to go to graduate studies, I hope you think seriously about Oklahoma State. And if you have not decided, please think about the NIE program and some of the things that it offers to you for professional and personal rewards in life. I want to give a special thanks to Sundaresh, to Jerry, and to Valerie. They have been so helpful in our putting this together. And as Jerry said at the beginning, the mentoring committee of the Academy has worked to put together both the mentoring programs and which is in a pilot study this semester, and these webinars. So Bill did one earlier that some of you may have seen. Stacy's going to be in charge of some future ones, and this one's on graduate studies. And we hope that you have enjoyed it. And if there's nothing else, it's been an hour, so I think we will start. No, we will stop. Let's see, Sundaresh, did you have something you wanted to show? Oh, great.
Yeah, I just put up the the website, and there's quite a bit of information here for prospective students. But if you want to see what our current graduate students see, you can look at that, see what kind of research that goes on. There's a wealth of information, too much for me to get into in a couple of minutes. But I would encourage you to take a look at this website. The URL is ceat.okstate.edu/IEM. And I'll put that in the chat box. That's it, Lee. And then I want to thank you and Jerry for doing this webinar. It will be recorded and available to others, and we'll distribute it so they can the others can see it as well. So you may have more people asking you questions and such. So that happens. Well, I don't know that there's a way for them to contact you, but if anything comes up, we'll definitely be in touch with you. So thank you for doing it, Lee and Jerry. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone, for doing this. As a student, it's always great to hear the personal experiences from people who have in their life traveled a similar path to me, and I just kind of don't know where I'm going or how to go about it sometimes. So these are really beneficial, hearing the different paths from people.
Well, we're here for you, and as Sundaresh said, I'll be glad to visit with you, and I'm sure that Dr. Jerry Dechert will also. So, you live in a nice city of Tulsa. Really enjoyed the years of that. I was in Stillwater. I'm in Austin, Texas now, but spent a lot of years in Stillwater and College Station and places that are college towns. And so you would enjoy Stillwater if you moved over there. So with that, I think we will end this webinar, and I thank all of you for being here as participants, and those of you that are here who are on the committee and on the TCA, I thank all of you for being here. And so with that, we wish you a very safe time. No COVID in your future, hopefully, and please have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye, Lee.
Thank you, Lee. Bye-bye.
Bye.